The station was dying. Metal screamed as atmosphere vented through three expanding hull breaches. Emergency lights painted everything red. And in Corridor 7, where the wounded lay waiting for evacuation that would never come, Commander Kasara of the Velthari watched her own people step over her paralyzed body and keep running. Her spine had shattered in the first blast. Four arms hung useless. Silver gray skin had turned ash pale from shock. She could move her head, nothing else. When the next Thraxian boarding wave came through, she would die where she lay. The evacuation protocol was clear. Mobile wounded first. Critical cases if time permitted. Non-mobile cases were battlefield losses. She had written that protocol herself 3 years ago. She had never imagined she would become subject to it. Another Velthari officer sprinted past. Kasara recognized him. Junior tactical officer. She had approved his promotion 6 months back. He looked down at her, touched two fingers to his chest in salute, and kept running. His eyes said everything that needed saying. I am sorry, but I will not die here with you. The station shuddered. Somewhere deep in the superstructure, a support beam gave way. Kasara heard the Thraxian war chant growing louder. 2 corridors away, maybe less. The massive crimson-skinned warriors would sweep through this sector in minutes, killing anything that moved and plenty that did not. She had accepted death the moment her legs stopped responding to neural commands. What she had not expected was the loneliness of it. To watch her own kind abandon her without hesitation. To realize that all her years of service meant nothing measured against the simple animal logic of survival. Then she heard bootfalls. Human bootfalls. The rhythm was wrong for Velthari, heavier, less precise. She turned her head as far as the pain allowed. A human soldier stood in the corridor entrance, breathing hard, plasma rifle slung across his back, dark hair matted with sweat, gray uniform torn at the shoulder. His eyes swept the corridor, cataloging the dead and dying, and locked onto her. You are still mobile, Kasara said, forcing her voice to stay level. The evacuation shuttles are 3 decks down. You have perhaps 4 minutes before this section collapses entirely. The human walked toward her, not running toward the shuttles, toward her. I know where the shuttles are, he said. Then why are you here? Checking for survivors. I am not a survivor, Kasara replied. I am paralyzed from the second vertebrae down. My people have already made the tactical assessment. I suggest you do the same. The human crouched beside her. Up close, she could see the name stenciled on his chest plate. Sergeant E. Cross. Young for a sergeant, maybe 25 in human years. His hands moved over her body with surprising gentleness, checking her injuries, fingers careful around the jagged metal shards still embedded near her lower spine. Sergeant Cross, Kasara continued, each word precise. I am ordering you to leave. You are not in my chain of command, ma'am, Cross replied, still examining her injuries. And even if you were, I do not abandon people. Your species' attachment to sentiment will be your extinction, Kasara said. The words came out harsher than she intended. Pain made her edges sharp. I have seen the casualty projections. Humans die because you refuse to accept losses. Cross looked at her. His eyes were dark brown, unnervingly steady. Maybe, but I can carry you. Spinal injury means I cannot sling you over my shoulder, but if I stabilize your neck and support your back, I can manage a fireman's carry variant. You weigh what, 60 kilos? 57, Kasara admitted. But the shuttles are 3 decks down, I know. I also know that Corridor J7 connects to the emergency maintenance shaft, drops straight to hangar level. We can bypass the main routes entirely. Kasara stared at him. That shaft was sealed during the first attack wave. Structural damage made it unstable. Unstable means dangerous. Sealed means impossible. There is a difference. Cross was already pulling trauma webbing from his pack. I need you to stay completely still. If that metal fragment shifts, it could sever your spinal cord completely. Right now you are paralyzed. If it shifts, you die. If it shifts while you are carrying me, then I will move very carefully, Cross interrupted. He began wrapping the webbing around her torso, each movement deliberate. His hands never trembled. I am going to lift you now. This is going to hurt. I am sorry. Pain was relative. Kasara had been shot twice, stabbed once, and survived a shuttle crash that killed 8 others. She thought she understood her pain tolerance. She was wrong. The moment Cross lifted her, every nerve that still functioned screamed. The world grayed at the edges. She tasted copper. Her vision tunneled down to a pinpoint of red emergency lighting and Cross's face, set in concentration as he adjusted her weight across his shoulders. Still with me, Commander? He asked. Kasara realized she had stopped breathing. She forced air into her lungs. Yes. Good. Because we need to move. Now. The Thraxian war chant was 1 corridor away. Cross moved, not running. Running would jostle her spine and kill her, but his walk was swift and purposeful, each step placed with the kind of precision Kasara associated with orbital mechanics, not infantry sergeants. He carried her weight like it was nothing, one hand supporting her back, the other braced against the wall for stability. Behind them, she heard the Thraxians breach into Corridor 7, heard the wet sounds of them executing the wounded who could not flee, heard their triumph roar as they found fresh targets. Cross turned a corner. The emergency maintenance shaft access was exactly where he said it would be, and it was sealed. A blast door 2 meters tall, security panel dark, warning lights flashing amber. "I thought you said this was our exit," Kasara managed. "It is." Cross lowered her carefully against the wall, propping her upright. He pulled a compact plasma torch from his belt. "This will take about 90 seconds. I need you to tell me if you hear them getting closer. You cannot cut through that door in 90 seconds. The torch flared blue-white. Cross pressed it to the door seal and began cutting. The metal resisted for perhaps 3 seconds before it started to glow. He was not cutting through the door. He was cutting through the locking mechanism. Smart. Faster. 60 seconds, Cross said calmly. Behind them, the Thraxian war chant grew louder. They had found the corridor junction. They were following the blood trail. Kasara's blood. She was still bleeding from the initial injury, leaving a clear path. 40 seconds. She heard boots now. Heavy boots. Thraxian warriors in full combat armor weighed close to 200 kilos each. The deck plating groaned under their weight. 20 seconds. The first Thraxian rounded the corner. 3 meters tall, crimson skin like exposed muscle, 3 black eyes that fixed on Cross's back with predatory focus. It raised a plasma cannon that could punch through bulkheads. "Sergeant," Kasara started. The door lock gave way. Cross pocketed the torch, grabbed Kasara, and threw both of them through the opening. The Thraxian fired. The plasma bolt hit the wall where Cross had been standing and melted a hole clean through to the next compartment. Cross kicked the damaged door shut behind them. It would not hold, but it would slow them down. He lifted Kasara again, adjusted her weight, and looked down into the maintenance shaft. It dropped 30 meters straight down. No ladder, no safety rails, just a vertical tube lined with exposed conduits and the promise of a very fast descent. "I am going to need you to trust me," Cross said. "I am already trusting you with my life," Kasara replied. "What is one more insanity?" Cross smiled. It was brief but genuine. Then he stepped into the shaft. They fell. Cross had both arms wrapped around her, his body positioned beneath hers, and she realized with sudden clarity that he intended to take the impact himself, to use his own body as a cushion for hers. "Do not," she began. Too late. They hit the bottom. Cross's legs absorbed the shock, bent, rolled. He ended on his back with Kasara on top of him, her spine still perfectly aligned, the metal fragment still embedded exactly where it had been. No shift, no additional damage. But Cross was not moving. "Sergeant?" Kasara's voice cracked. "Sergeant Cross?" He groaned, opened his eyes. "Still here, just give me a second." Above them, she heard the Thraxians breaching the damaged door. They had perhaps 20 seconds before the warriors started descending the shaft. Cross forced himself upright, lifted Kasara again, and started moving. The hangar entrance was 30 meters ahead. She could see the blue glow of shuttle engines through the doorway. Still active, still waiting. "Why?" Kasara asked. The question had been building since Corridor 7. "Why are you doing this? You do not know me. I am not even your species, and I—" She stopped, finished it. "I would not have saved you." Cross did not break stride. "I know." "Then why?" "Because someone has to," Cross said simply. "Because if we only save the people who would save us, we become something I do not want to be. Because you are still alive, and while you are still alive, you deserve a chance to stay that way." They crossed into the hangar. 3 evacuation shuttles remained, engines hot, boarding ramps extended. Alliance personnel were streaming in, the last desperate survivors of Covenant Station's defense. Kasara saw Velthari, humans, Quelhari, even a pair of Omnathi in their containment suits. She also saw the shuttle crews preparing to retract the boarding ramps, preparing to launch. They had perhaps 30 seconds before the hangar's structural integrity failed completely. Cross broke into a run. The movement sent fresh agony through Kasara's body, but she bit down on it, forced herself silent. He was running for both of them now. If she distracted him with her pain, they both died. 20 meters to the nearest shuttle. 15. 10. The boarding ramp began to retract. "Wait!" Cross shouted. "Wounded incoming." The ramp stopped, reversed. A human crew chief appeared at the top, took one look at what Cross was carrying, and waved them forward. 5 meters. Behind them, the first Thraxian dropped into the hangar, then another, then 5 more. They saw the shuttles, raised their weapons. Cross reached the ramp. Hands grabbed Kasara, pulled her aboard, strapped her onto a medical stretcher. She caught a glimpse of Cross's face, exhausted, bloodied, but alive, before the medics swarmed around her. The shuttle ramp retracted. The engines howled. They lifted off just as the Thraxians opened fire, plasma bolts scorching across the hull but failing to penetrate. The shuttle banked hard, accelerated, and punched through the hangar's atmospheric shield into open space. Through the viewport, Kasara watched Covenant Station die, watched it break apart in a slow cascade of fire and debris, watched the Thraxian dreadnought move through the wreckage like a predator through bones. She had survived. Against all probability, against all tactical logic, she had survived, because a human sergeant had refused to leave her behind. The Alliance medical frigate Pale Horizon received them 40 minutes later. Kasara was transferred immediately to the surgical bay. The human doctors conferred with Velthari medical specialists via quantum link. The prognosis was clear. The damage to her spine was catastrophic. Even with the most advanced reconstructive surgery available, she would never walk again, never fight again. Her career as a warrior was over. She woke from the surgery to find Cross sitting beside her bed. He looked worse than she felt. His left arm was in a regeneration sleeve. Bruises covered half his face. But he was upright, conscious, and apparently waiting for her to wake. "You should be in medical," Kasara said. Her voice came out as a rasp. "I was. They discharged me an hour ago. Minor fractures, soft tissue damage, nothing permanent." Cross leaned forward slightly. "How are you feeling?" "Like I fell 30 meters and survived." Kasara attempted what might have been a smile. Her facial muscles did not entirely cooperate. "The doctors told me the prognosis. I will live. I will not recover. My spine is too damaged for regeneration." Cross nodded slowly. He did not offer false comfort. She appreciated that. "I spoke with your commanding officer," Cross continued. "He said the Velthari do not have disability accommodations for paralyzed warriors. He said you will be honorably discharged and provided with a small pension." Cross's tone made it clear what he thought of that arrangement. "That is our way," Kasara replied. "A warrior who cannot fight is no longer a warrior. It is not cruelty, it is practicality." "It is waste," Cross said flatly. "You have 15 years of tactical experience. You commanded station defenses across 4 sectors. You wrote half the Alliance's current evacuation protocols. And your people are going to put you on a pension and forget you exist?" Kasara said nothing. There was nothing to say. He was right, and they both knew it. Cross reached into his jacket and pulled out a data slate. "I took the liberty of forwarding your service record to Alliance Command, specifically to Admiral Reeves. She is in charge of the new Strategic Advisory Corps. It is a think tank division. Tacticians, strategists, people who can see 3 moves ahead. No physical requirements, just brains." He placed the slate on the bed beside her. "She wants to meet with you, if you are interested." Kasara stared at the slate, then at Cross. "Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep saving me? I already told you." "No," Kasara cut him off. "On the station, you saved my life because you refused to abandon people. I understand that. But this? Finding me a new posting? This is not about refusing to abandon people. This is something else." Cross was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. 2 years ago, I was pinned down in a canyon on Helios 6, Thraxian ambush. My entire squad was dead or dying. I was shot in both legs, could not move, could not fight, just lying there, waiting for them to finish me off. He met her eyes. "A Velthari strike team came through on an unrelated mission. They could have kept going. I was not their problem. But their commander stopped, pulled me out of that canyon, got me to a medical evac. I never learned her name, never got to say thank you. She was killed 3 months later in the defense of Mirror Point." Kasara felt something cold settle in her chest. What did she look like? Silver gray skin, 4 arms, moved like water. When I asked her why she was saving me, she said— Cross paused, remembering. She said, "Because you are still breathing, and while you breathe, you fight, even if the fight is just to survive." Kasara closed her eyes. The words were hers. She had spoken them 1,000 times. It was the central tenet of Velthari warrior philosophy. You fight until you cannot, and while you can, you do. "That was me," she said quietly. "Helios 6, Canyon ambush. I remember. You were the human sergeant. Young, angry. You tried to order me to leave you behind." Cross smiled. "You told me I was not in your chain of command." "It appears I have been repeating myself," Kasara replied. Something in her chest loosened. Not the pain, the weight. "You carried me 3 kilometers to the evac point. I had forgotten." "I had not," Cross said. "You saved my life, gave me a second chance at this war, at being useful. I am just returning the favor. By finding me a desk job? By finding you a way to keep fighting." Cross stood. "The Strategic Advisory Corps needs people who understand cost, who have made the hard calls, who know what it takes to survive when everything is falling apart." He gestured at her paralyzed body. "You are not a warrior anymore, Commander. You are something more valuable. You are someone who understands what survival actually costs." He moved toward the door, paused, looked back. Admiral Reeves wants an answer by tomorrow, Cross said. I told her you would take the position. Was I wrong? Cassara looked at the data slate. At her hands, all four of them, resting motionless on the blanket, at the future she had assumed was over. No, she said, you were not wrong. Cross nodded once and left. Cassara lay in the silence of the medical bay and allowed herself to feel something she had not felt since the station fell. Not gratitude, not relief, something sharper, purpose. She reached for the data slate. Her upper arm still functioned, though the control was imperfect. It took 3 attempts to activate the screen. When she did, Admiral Reeves's personnel request filled the display. Wanted. Senior Strategic Advisor. Experience in multi-theater defense coordination required. Physical mobility not required. Combat veterans strongly preferred. At the bottom of the request was a personal note from the Admiral. Commander Cassara, Sergeant Cross speaks highly of your tactical instincts. The Alliance needs people who know how to make the calls that keep people alive. I hope you will consider joining us. AR. Cassara read it twice. Then she began composing her acceptance. Outside her viewport, the Pale Horizon's engines flared as the ship adjusted course. They were heading toward Alliance Central Command, toward her new posting, toward a future she had not imagined possible. She thought about Cross, about the young human sergeant she had pulled from a canyon 2 years ago, who had grown into someone who refused to leave people behind, who saw value in the broken and the discarded. Her people would call his actions inefficient, emotional, a waste of tactical resources. They would be wrong. Efficiency was not the same as wisdom, and wisdom was knowing that sometimes the strongest weapon was not the one that destroyed the most enemies, but the one that refused to let its allies fall. Cassara finished her message to Admiral Reeves and sent it. The confirmation came back within minutes. Welcome to the Strategic Advisory Corps. Report to Central Command when medically cleared. She lay back against the pillows. Her body was ruined. Her career as a warrior was over. But the war was not, and she was still breathing. While she breathed, she fought, even if the fight looked different now. 3 months later, Commander Cassara sat in the Strategic Advisory briefing room aboard Alliance Central Command and listened to a junior officer propose a new evacuation protocol. The proposal was efficient, precise. It prioritized mobile wounded and abandoned critical cases. It was identical to the protocol she had written 3 years ago. Rejected, Cassara said quietly. The room went silent. 12 senior officers turned to look at her. She sat at the end of the table in a specialized mobility chair, her paralyzed body held upright by supportive webbing, her 4 hands resting on the armrests. Commander, Admiral Reeves asked, you wrote the current protocol. Why reject an identical replacement? Because I was wrong, Cassara replied. She activated her data slate. A holographic display materialized above the table, showing casualty statistics from Covenant Station. The protocol I wrote prioritizes efficiency. It saves the maximum number of lives in the minimum amount of time, but it does not account for the value of those left behind. She highlighted a specific data point. Covenant Station. 47 critical cases abandoned during evacuation. 46 died. 1 survived because a human sergeant refused to accept the protocol's logic. She looked around the table. That sergeant is now training a full company in non-standard evacuation techniques. Techniques that have reduced critical case mortality by 18% across 4 subsequent engagements. The junior officer who had proposed the protocol shifted uncomfortably. With respect, Commander, we cannot build policy around individual acts of heroism. This is not about heroism, Cassara interrupted. This is about understanding that efficiency is not the same as effectiveness. A protocol that abandons the critically wounded is efficient. A protocol that teaches soldiers how to save them anyway is effective. Because the soldier you save today might be the one who saves a dozen others tomorrow. Admiral Reeves leaned forward. What are you proposing? A revised protocol. One that includes rapid stabilization techniques for spinal and neural injuries. One that trains every soldier in emergency trauma transport. One that treats critical cases as salvageable until proven otherwise. Cassara pulled up a new set of projections. It will take longer. It will require more training. It will cost resources. But the long-term survival rates improve by 23%. And the cultural impact, soldiers who know they will not be abandoned, improves unit cohesion across all metrics. The room was silent. Several officers were studying the projections with evident interest. Others looked skeptical, but no one was dismissing her outright. Admiral Reeves glanced at the data, then at Cassara. You are proposing we rebuild our entire evacuation doctrine based on what happened to you? No, Cassara replied. I am proposing we rebuild it based on what Sergeant Cross taught me. That the people we save are not resources to be optimized. They are allies to be valued. And the difference between those two perspectives is the difference between survival and victory. The Admiral smiled. It was a small thing, barely visible, but it was there. Motion to approve Commander Kasara's revised protocol. All in favor? 8 hands rose immediately. 2 more rose after a moment's hesitation. The remaining 2 abstained, but did not object. Motion carries, Admiral Reeves said. Commander, you will oversee implementation. Coordinate with Sergeant Cross's training division. I want initial rollout within 6 weeks. Kasara inclined her head. Yes, Admiral. The briefing continued. Logistics, fleet movements, supply chain analyses. Kasara participated where her expertise was relevant and observed where it was not. This was her world now, not the front lines, not the moment-to-moment chaos of combat, but the slow, deliberate work of building systems that kept people alive. It was not what she had imagined her life would become, but it was enough. After the briefing, she found Cross in the training facility. He was running a squad through the new stabilization techniques, demonstrating proper spinal support on a practice dummy. His movements were precise, professional, the same care he had shown when he carried her out of Covenant Station. He saw her approach and dismissed the squad for a break. Commander, he said, I heard the protocol passed. It did, thanks to you. Kasara maneuvered her chair closer. I wanted you to know what you did on that station. It changed more than just my life. It changed how the Alliance thinks about the people we fight beside. Cross shook his head. I just did what anyone should do. No, Kasara replied. You did what almost no one does. You saw someone the system had already discarded, and you decided they still mattered. That is not common. That is rare. She met his eyes. I do not thank people often, Sergeant. My culture considers it unnecessary, but I am thanking you now. Not just for saving me, for teaching me that survival is not the same as living, and that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to let someone fall. Cross was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. You would have done the same for me. You already did. Perhaps, Kasara admitted, but I would not have thought to find you a new purpose afterward. That part was all you. She turned her chair toward the exit, then paused. The new protocol requires senior trainers, people who understand both the tactical and emotional components of combat evacuation. I recommended you for the position. Admiral Reeves approved it this morning. Congratulations, Lieutenant Cross. Cross stared at her. Lieutenant? The promotion comes with the posting. You have earned it. Kasara allowed herself a small smile. Try not to refuse this one. The Alliance needs people who understand what you understand. That we do not fight for efficiency, we fight for each other. And the moment we forget that, we have already lost. She left him standing there, promotion still sinking in, and returned to her office. There was work to do, protocols to finalize, training schedules to coordinate, a war to help win, one saved life at a time. Her body was broken, her old life was gone, but she was still breathing, still fighting, still useful. And in the end, that was all any warrior could ask for. To fight, to matter, to refuse to fall, even when falling would be easier. Sergeant Cross had taught her that. Now she would teach it to everyone else.